It's the weirdest Samsung Galaxy phone that's ever been released. The Samsung Galaxy S10 5G was the strangest rollout of a phone which was meant to be Samsung's flagship. This was the Ultra before the Ultra. But even despite that odd rollout, can you still use this in 2026?
This is definitely a strange launch by Samsung, purely for the fact that in a lot of markets, and in my market in the UK in particular, the infrastructure around 5G just wasn't available. So the phone, even though it was announced in February 2019, didn't actually come out until almost later that summer. And it was also mismarketed as just a S10 Plus with 5G added on. But it was actually more than that. And as we'll discuss, there are some total differences between the S10 Plus and the S10 5G. So in terms of design, the S10 5G was ahead of its time. While the S10 Plus was the standard big phone, the 5G was really the first ultra phone. It measured 6.7 inches with a dynamic AMOLED display. They're not that far off compared to the bezels that we get on current phones, apart from the chin at the bottom. In terms of the build, it had that classic glossy finish, but it felt super premium. It's so light, it's so thin to hold in the hand, and having no massive camera bump on the back of the phone is actually really refreshing. Now, in terms of ports, we have got a 3.5mm headphone jack, which obviously is a rare luxury now. I think most people have moved on to using Bluetooth, but there are people out there who still hang on dearly to their wired headphones. However, this was one of the first Samsung flagship phones where they removed the microSD slot. And the reason why lots of people went for the S10 Plus over the 5G, and that was mainly because they needed to fit in the 5G modem into the phone. Plus, it also had a bigger battery compared to the S10 Plus. It had a 4,500 milliamp hour battery. So the battery and the modem combined meant that the microSD slot was removed, something that I know a lot of fans of Samsung were dead against. Now, in terms of display, it's absolutely beautiful still. It's 1440p panel with pixel density of 512 ppi. So even in 2026, this is a beautiful AMOLED display, and it even supports HDR10+. However, we do have the limitation of only 60 hertz on here. Now, I think a lot of people have got used to having 120 hertz on their flagship phones. So obviously, in that respect, this does show its age. And on the display, we've also got that pill cutout, and it was actually a larger pill cutout compared to the S10 Plus, so they could fit in a time of flight sensor at the front. However, I don't actually mind the pill cutout, and having two cameras on the front of your phone is actually pretty cool. Now, in terms of performance, we had a Snapdragon 855, and obviously, this does show its age in 2026. However, if you wanted to use the phone for just day-to-day things, gaming works fine, day-to-day activities, obviously calls, text messages, things like that, it works perfectly fine. However, obviously, now we're in 2026, Samsung have stopped supporting this phone with software updates. It's capped at Android 12, so we really are behind now, and that means that obviously no security patches are released by Samsung. So using it in 2026 as your main phone probably isn't the greatest of ideas. But on the 5G, we did get a unique camera setup. We have the triple camera array with 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. But with the 5G model, we had that 3D time of flight sensor, and this allowed for video live focus. So that was basically real-time background blur. And obviously AR was a big thing at this time. And we had the quick measure app, things like that. You could really use AR properly. But in terms of actually using the camera itself in 2026, it's actually really good. In good lighting, it gives you great photos, really good videos. Although in lower light, obviously, this is where it starts to show its age and you get a lot more grainier photos and less details here. And obviously, the specs don't lie. And in 2026, it does lag behind. However, if you're not that bothered and just want to take basic shots, it's perfectly good. Now, obviously, when the phone was released, it had a large battery for its time. But if you're using it in 2026, the likelihood is you're probably going to have a second-hand model or refurbished model, which obviously means there's going to be some battery degradation over time. So it's not going to be the strongest performing battery. But one advantage of going with the 5G model over the S10 Plus at the time was that it supported 25-watt super fast charging. And a lot of Samsung phones now are still using that 25-watt charging, so you won't notice a difference.
So would I recommend using the Samsung Galaxy S10 5G in 2026? Well, the short answer is probably not. And that's purely because of the fact that we get no more software updates. So obviously you're going to get some apps that work, some apps that might not be optimized without the security patches. Things like banking apps, for example, probably aren't going to work on this as effectively as they should in 2026. So on that basis, probably not. But if you are looking for a phone as a secondary device, then for well under £200, you can pick these up for about £150 in the UK. Then I think it's still a fantastic phone. Look at that beautiful screen. Look at that thin design you still get on here. It still feels great to use even in 2026. 7 years on, it's still a lovely phone. It still looks great and is still more than usable. But it's been fun going back to a phone that I absolutely fell in love with all those years ago. It's been great to revisit it. And let me know down in the comments if there's any phones you'd like me to revisit in another video. But thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Much appreciated. Until next time, cheers.